here, Switch 2025, right here at the Beyond stage. I want to let you know that we're starting very soon. And if you're walking into the hall right now, I'd like to encourage you to take to as far front and to the sides, which I do see some empty spaces right there. So welcome. Please settle in. We're starting very, very soon. Now, the first session of the day is Health and Biomedical Track. We are focusing on the future of precision medicine in healthcare. Now, I know that you got some questions about the topic at hand, so I want to bring your attention to the QR code that we'd like to show you very soon on screen. For you to take note, it is going to be the same QR code that we're using for the next 3 days. So if you'd like to take a photo, go ahead right now. If not, do me a favor, scan the QR code and use pigeonhole.at. Use the password BEYOND to, of course, fire away your questions. Ooh, I see many phones up in the air. I am, of course, expecting lots of great questions coming from you this morning. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we're starting very soon. And also, before we begin as well, I want to let you know that this morning's healthcare and biomedical track is brought to you by our wonderful partners, Diagnostic Development Hub, or DXD Hub for short, and supported by the Consortium for Clinical Research and Innovation, CRIS. Ladies and gentlemen, before I go on stage to introduce today's agenda, we'd like to say a very, very big thank you to our partners and also to show you what they do as well. So please take a look.
DXD Hub is a house of people who are truly passionate about preventive and precision healthcare. What we have today is a set of integrated, multidisciplinary capabilities in developing diagnostics in various form factors. This ranges from the traditional in vitro diagnostic assays to digital diagnostics in the form of software as medical devices, as well as a set of curated engineering capabilities that focus on building connected point-of-care systems. It is the iterative productization framework that has guided us in our approach so far.
Digital diagnostics aims to enhance efficiency, accessibility, and precision in delivery. Over the years, we have built capabilities that now allows us to fully take on end-to-end product development in an ISO 13485 compliant environment. That includes UI/UX, solution architecture, full-stack development, AI/ML developments, and hospital integration sandbox. We adhere to industry best practices like CI/CD with DevOps, AI/ML pipelines, cybersecurity practices. Apart from building diagnostic products, there is a greater challenge in adopting and scaling these solutions. To address this gap, we launched the Digital Health Accelerator initiative in 2023 with health clusters and sign-ups to implement solutions that meet clinical needs and establish reference customers.
Our IMT team focuses on building sample-to-result instrumentation and point-of-care devices. These include PCR devices and quantitative biosensors. Our approach ensures it is ruggedized for use in the real world and it is designed for manufacturing. The device development involves close collaboration between bioassay, hardware, and digital solutions. I also want to talk about our localization capabilities, which is a critical step in the IVD manufacturing processes and essential in overcoming cold chain for product logistics.
Today, diagnostic is largely viewed as a cost to the healthcare system. While developing diagnostic is an engineering problem, before we start the technical work, we really need to think about whose problem are we trying to solve, how big is the problem, and what value does the solution bring to the table. And therefore, what is the affordability or willingness for people to pay for the solution? Then we ask, what is our strategy to cross the so-called valleys of death so that we can bring the solution to deployment at scale? The first is to think about the regulatory strategies. For example, how do you craft an intended use statement that defines the product market fit without compromising on your speed to go to market? And second, your market and monetization strategy, so that there is a pathway towards bringing the product to the user at an economically sustainable manner. And all of these considerations goes into the definition of what we call the target product profile. During the product development journey, the TPP definition influences many decisions on product design, technical optimization, supply chain consideration, strategies for design verification and validation.
In a world grappling with unprecedented health crises, the shortcomings of conventional healthcare approaches are evident. To resolve the unmet clinical needs through transformative solutions, healthcare innovation is critical.
However, turning an innovative idea into a product that actually benefits and reaches patients is never easy. That's where NHIC comes in.
As a driver of change, we are always asking ourselves, how do we bring this idea to the patient and people to make a difference that matters?
Ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to day one of the Singapore Week of Innovation and Technology. My name is Sue. It is a pleasure to be spending 3 days with you. You are here at the Beyond stage. Allow me to share some highlights with you of the very exciting agenda that we have here at the Beyond Conference. Firstly, a very warm welcome. I hope you had a great time at the opening ceremony and joining us right here at the Beyond area. I want to let you know we've got many exciting things for you to look forward to. So allow me to get started on what's really exciting here at the Beyond stage, shall we? All right, the Singapore Week of Innovation and Technology, as you know it as Switch, stands as Asia's premier innovation festival, bringing together people like you, our market leaders, our entrepreneurs, our creators, accelerators as well, and investors from the global innovation ecosystem. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this year, 2025, is a very special year for Switch. Do you know why? It is our 10th anniversary alongside with SG60, our, of course, grand birthday here in Singapore. I believe that deserves a very big round of applause. Welcome to our 10th edition. A decade of amazing innovation, and thanks for celebrating with us. So, building on our 2024 success, I want to let you know that we saw some amazing numbers. Are you ready for them? So last year, we drew over 20,000 in-person attendance from more than 100 global markets. This year, we hope to set a new record with you. We do see many people in the hall, so hopefully 2025 will be another milestone for all of us. As you know, Switch continues to push the boundaries of innovation across healthcare, AI, robotics, and quantum, the masterclass, which is happening right now. So what can you expect here, my friends? You, of course, will be treated to the exciting lineup of innovation-centric activities. For example, anyone here excited to know more about Slingshot? Yes, it's always a key highlight for all of us. It's, of course, the starting pitching finals where tomorrow's unicorn will take center stage. Look out for them. Alongside, right here, you will be treated to thought-provoking leadership keynotes, strategic market access sessions, and curated deep tech discussions alongside with our industry experts and pioneers. I want to let you know that you have full 3 days to explore and enjoy the exhibition just outside and all around you. And there are networking lounges on the side. We've got partner events. We've got experiential tech zones that you can't miss. And not only here at level 1, that's where you are, there's also more on level 3. So please take note of where is where and when is what. And of course, you can connect with our partners and fellow attendees. That could be a catalyst for your next breakthrough innovation. So right here at the Beyond stage, we've got the sectorial-led thought leadership stage, and we will be spotlighting 5 pertinent tracks this year. This morning, I know you're here for the Health and Biomedical track, followed by the Health and Biomedical Masterclass, which is happening at 2 levels, level 1 and level 3. I want to tell you the name of the room. It's called Cassia Main Room. That's happening from 2 p.m. So please take note of the time. And also, concurrently from 2 p.m., we have the Quantum Tech track, which will, of course, be right here at the Beyond stage. And right now, if you can hear some noise coming from the back, they are having the master class right now, just here in the hall. And coming back to this morning, I know you're here for the Health and Biomedical track. We will be exploring the transformative potential of precision medicine. Our experts are already on standby to talk to you about that, examining global trends, implementation challenges, and also, importantly, opportunities across Asia. So you'll be hearing key highlights in healthcare innovation, including technological readiness and cross-sector Asia as well. Now, I want to let you know that we will be driving the conversation about adoption of precision medicine, which is going to be right here, once again, at level 1 and level 3, Cassia Room, and in the adjacent masterclass stage. Now, I know there is a lot to remember. So at this moment in time, can I just ask, have any one of you downloaded our Switch app? Put up your hands. Yes, thank you for the support. I do see some hands not in the air. So right now, if you have just about 2 seconds, could you please download the Switch app? It's going to be real handy for you as you navigate so many things over the next 3 days. And in the afternoon, we will be going over to the Quantum Tech. Will you be joining us then as well? And of course, we will explore the latest development in of course, technology, and why quantum should be part of your corporate innovation strategies. We will hear from the investors talking about market opportunities and challenges. Now, just a keynote for tomorrow. Any one of you joining us for day 2 as well? Do you know what we're talking about? Tomorrow at the Beyond Conference, we are going right into the themes of AI and robotics. And also debuting for Beyond this year as well, we will be talking about AI for materials. And on day 3, I welcome you back. It is going to be Open Access AI Community Day right here. So, I think it's time to kick off our health and biomedical track. Now, this is, of course, sponsored and brought to you by Diagnostic Development Hub, DXD Hub, and proudly supported by Consortium for Clinical Research and Innovation, or CRIS. We will begin the first session right now, a very exciting plenary discussing international healthcare system approaches to adopting precision medicine innovation, and also as well some high-level impact intervention to drive broader system change. What a great honor to start the morning with a very international panel of experts in healthcare. Our business leaders as well will be joining on stage to discuss the challenges like infrastructure readiness, workforce capacity, data integration, as well as national efforts to pilot and scale precision medicine. Of course, we want to take your questions. I will flash the QR code one more time for you to scan if you haven't done so. And our moderator will take about 10 minutes towards the end of the session to answer as many questions as possible. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, brought to you by DXD Hub and CRIS. Could you please put your hands together to welcome our moderator, Dr. Carl Firth, partner at Panacea Venture, to moderate the plenary. Let's give Dr. of course, a very big hand. Welcome, Dr. Firth. for our very first session.
Good morning, everybody. It's a real pleasure to be here. I'd like to invite my other panelists to also join me on the stage. A little bit lonely otherwise. So we have a great set of panelists today to talk to you about precision medicine. And as the introducer earlier talked about, we're going to be covering a number of different areas. First of all, what is precision medicine? How is it being used in healthcare today? What are the challenges in implementing it? But more importantly, where is the future going to take us? So I'm going to start over on my left here with Jenny Kung, and maybe just ask her to give us her definition of precision medicine and tell us a little bit about the work that she does and why precision medicine is important.
Hi, everyone. I think we're going to just jump right into precision medicine. So if you're ready for it, let's sort of flex a little bit. I mean, I think it's an interesting question, Carl. I think if we look around, we might all be thinking about precision medicine just a little differently. Earlier this morning, when I got here, I was talking with some other individuals who are participating in this important discussion today and this important priority here in Singapore, and we realized we're all talking over each other in a way. We're all looking at and thinking about precision medicine in a variety of lenses and perspectives. So I can say from a Mayo Clinic, a Berg Innovation Exchange perspective, when we think about precision medicine and then more broadly how Mayo Clinic is thinking about it, we're thinking about it from a whole person-centered approach. There's precision biology, and then there's sort of individualized, personalized medicine. So what does that mean? Right? We know the aims in healthcare that we're always trying to achieve, delivering the right care to the right person at the right time. And then we have to layer on the right modality in the right context, with the right interventions and with the right support system, right? And so that's really the lens that we're taking on now. And I would love to anchor us, and maybe I'll be the oddball out today on our panel, where we have to get the biology right, we have to get the genetics right, we have to get the science right, but what is everything else that we must also be thinking about as a system to get precision medicine actually done right in a way that serves our future?
An important point you maybe just touched on there, I think. A lot of people may just think about precision medicine in terms of genetics, but it is a lot more than that. You could just say, what else is it beyond just genetics?
Yeah, absolutely. It requires a lot of precision, true to its form. We got to get the biology right, and then we have to get the social structures right, cultural right. We have to get behavioral, psychosocial precision in there. We have to be able to look across all segments of what being a human actually is to deliver the right care at the right place at the right time in the right way, and all those things that we must get right. And so when we look at it from a segmented population perspective and then don't contextualize for a person, then we miss that boat. We miss an enormous opportunity, right?
Maybe turn to Sanjay. What about your perspective? Because you're coming at it from the perspective of a clinical practitioner. You run a research department at the Medanta Hospital in India. Can you tell us a bit more about what you do and how precision medicine is important?
Thanks, Carl. I am Sanjay, and I work as chair of research and clinical cardiology at Medanta Medicity, which is a chain of hospitals, probably proud to say it's the best rated hospitals in India, private hospitals, over the last few years consecutively. So my job is more of clinical cardiologist and also overseeing in the research where the direction and what the world is taking us to. A word about precision medicine, as you talked about. What I, as a physician, as a cardiologist, look at precision medicine is targeted therapies. Today what we look at is disease not as an individual. It's not only the organ, it's not only on the system, it's basically a particular aspect of a system which has to be targeted. Why we have to target that system, we also have to minimize the collateral damage, which otherwise would happen and was happening till this time. And what needs to be done is that we need to identify the targets, because the targets are to be redefined according to what the disease process is. We have to redefine the pathways. We have to redefine identification of those disease locations, and also deliver them with the proper methodology so that the injury is minimum to the area where it is required to be, and it is not in collateral. I'll also would like to say is that I somehow want to differentiate with personalized medicine, because personalized medicine is more in general. Precision is something which is particular disease aspect based, and individualized is an individual based, where a lot of other things would come into fore, the habitus, the lifestyle, the socioeconomic status and other things, and that is why individualized is a little bit, or personalized is a little bit different from the precision medicine to my understanding.
Great, and I think there's a few things in there that we definitely want to come back to later on, but before we do that, Yi-Xiong, could you perhaps give us your definition of precision medicine and tell us a bit more as well about the work that you're doing?
So it turns out, Jenny, my job is to make you feel less of an outlier. So we don't use the term precision medicine, we're Precision Health Singapore. And I think that genomic technologies offers us an opportunity to interrogate biology in a way that we've never been able to do in the past, and I do think that's important. Genomics is not just about genetics, but Patrick, our executive director, often says that there's some unique things about genetics. The first is that it's that biomarker that doesn't change as we go through life, and so you can actually measure it once and actually use it, and that's the hypothesis that we're testing in the National Precision Medicine Program. The other thing that's interesting is that it's something that we are born with, and it starts to exert its influence on health from the day we're born. But it is not the only influence on health. Social factors, lifestyle factors, environmental exposures, and healthcare are the major determinants of health. And it turns out that all those non-genetic factors are actually the way that we attenuate any adverse effects that our genes have on our health. And it's the ability to pull those things together that underpins and deliver care that is respectful of patient autonomy, of their aspirations and their needs. That makes what we do, that's how we think about it.
And in fact, I think it's 80%, right? We know it to be true. 80% of your health is actually determined by things outside of your control, outside of what's happening in your body, the biomarkers, the genetics, etc. We can treat that, we can tackle that, but there's so much more that we don't know and that are exogenous really to sort of the science of it. So taking a step back and being able to look at a whole person, a whole body, and that's why at Mayo we've really looked at it from an individualized sort of medicine perspective and expanded that worldview a little bit.
And I think the key points being made here is precision medicine is broader than just genomics or genetics or any one of these kinds. I'm going to read you, I took the liberty of actually looking it up and what the dictionary defines as precision medicine. Precision medicine means using detailed information about an individual's biology, genetic, molecular, physiological, and environmental, to prevent, diagnose, and treat disease more effectively than population averages allow. So key points there is it's a much broader data set. It could be as much about the diet as it is about the genetics. And it's ultimately about how do we prevent, diagnose, and treat more effectively than the population averages allow. I'd like to turn a little bit, perhaps, to some of the work that you guys are doing in this space. And I'll start perhaps with Yi-Xiong. So you're heading up the Precision Medicine Initiative here in Singapore. Can you tell us a little bit about that, about sort of where it's at and what sort of objectives it has?
So the way the program has been conceptualized is a three-phase program over about 10 years. And we're right at the cusp of phase 3 today. Phase 3 began April 1st. In phase 1, there was even a question of whether we could get multiple organizations and institutions in Singapore to work together as one group and try and better understand what genetics might tell us, and whether we could even begin to address some of the challenges in society, discrimination, for example, that could result in the work we do worsening rather than narrowing health inequities. So we tackle a lot of those things in phase 1. Phase 2 was demonstration, right? And along with this idea that the genome begins to influence our health from the time we're born, phase 2 focused very much on individuals who were part of longitudinal cohorts who had been recruited from the general population. Most of them were healthy at the time. It does tend to select against people with certain diseases. It does limit some of our discovery. But we were very focused on what are the early markers that the genome is having an adverse effect on our health. And that became the SG100K cohort we just completed. So that was 100,000 whole genomes. In phase 3, we're very focused on healthcare system transformation. Right, so what will it take to have a healthcare system that is ready to receive and operationalize precision health for the patient? And what we're hoping to do is now sequence something in the region of 10% of the Singapore population, focusing primarily on people who are already in contact with the healthcare system, but not necessarily with advanced disease. I think we're very much still into this preventive population health sort of space. So a lot of the work that we'll do will parallel what's happening in Singapore in relation to primary care transformation, to make sure that if we do this, that we embed it across the care continuum.
So you have all of this data, collecting it from Singaporeans, storing it and figuring out all those challenges of how do you store it, where do you store it, ethical issues, etc. But how do you go from there into delivering something that is ultimately going to make a difference to a patient? How do you bridge that gap?
You heard Rui Fen talk about this, and I'm very conscious that Rui Fen's going to be up here in a few minutes. But product market fit is the ultimate thing, right? You've got to develop services that actually make sense to our patients and other stakeholders. And quite honestly, within the healthcare system, we have policymakers, we have funders, but there are no more important stakeholders than our providers and our patients. Right? So if you can't do this in a way that allows them to do work that they believe in, our providers to do work that they believe in, if you can't deliver information in a way that they can understand, that is meaningful to them, that doesn't interfere with their day-to-day workflow, then we failed. In actual fact, when you ask me the question, how do we do this? It's not biology. It's mostly psychology.
I was also thinking more about the model for engagement, say, with industry. I mean, there may be people in the audience, say, who have this great idea for a startup, but they'd love to get hold of some, data, longitudinal data on diabetics. How would they work with Precise on something like that?
So we have a variety of different ways of engaging with industry. I mean, if you're speaking very specifically about data access, there are models for an engagement. They can work with local partners who have access to the data set. But we also have engagement with much larger companies who are prepared to put funding behind enriching and generating new data. And eventually all of that will become publicly available. So there are numerous activities. And in fact, sort of creating that ecosystem is important. But the other thing that I would say is that sequence data on its own doesn't generate good health. There's a whole raft of services and products that need to fit in between the generation of sequence and good health for the patient. And we're very much working with companies. We're very interested in having companies come to us to begin to sort of shape those products and services to make sure that they are fit for market and make sense.
Thanks. So, but maybe Jenny, we can turn to you a little bit. Maybe you can tell us a little bit more about the work that you're doing within the Innovation Exchange.
Yeah, before we do that, and there's a linkage here, I promise you, so you don't get upset with me. I want to I don't want to say double click, it's overused, right? But I am going to double click on a few points made in the sense that, really at the exchange or how we look at innovation is really around, does it make the lives of our care teams, our patients, our caregivers better? And so in light of all innovation, including what we're talking about today, any technology sort of agnostic to anything, does it actually fit or does it create a burden? And that's probably the most important thing that I think you touched on and I really want to double down on, because that really is a lens that we take. We see so many incredible things that are, we're in unprecedented times. I mean, what a time to be alive. Cures right around the corner, right? For nearly everything. Technology like we could never imagine it. But what does that mean? Does it actually create a burden? We see that now, that the data fatigue, right? It doesn't matter how much AI you layer onto this world that we live in. The fatigue is real. What does that translate into, though? In the rooms, in the patient rooms, in the floors, when our nurses are with the patients at the bedside, when you're in a family meeting, sitting there, making really, really critical decisions, inundated by clinical decision-making tools. Absolutely. But when you have 5 or 6 or a dozen clinical decision-making tools, that actually doesn't help you make any more clinical decisions, right? And so at the end of the day, really we're grounding all of what we think about and understand. And I think we're in a really nice spot from an innovation exchange perspective to ask some of these hard questions and kind of push on this. Support the science, support the growth, support the innovation 1,000%. What does this actually mean? How are we going to implement this? How are we going to build a workforce and an infrastructure to support it?
Well, maybe with that we can turn to you, Dr. Mittal, given that you're on the front end and seeing the delivery of these technologies and how they affect the patients directly. So can you tell us a bit more about the work that's going on in your hospital and maybe addressing some of these issues? Is precision medicine, is it helping and is it sometimes actually a hindrance to best patient benefits?
Yeah, so let me go back a little bit. We have been talking about precision medicines and the way the world is going. The challenge right now still remains one, and that is that less than 5% of diseases today that we know are curable without leaving a scar. Less than 5%. 95% of diseases may be curable to some extent, maybe 10-15%, but they would leave a scar. They leave some damage. Surgeries, for example, you remove the tumor, you leave a scar. So that is something which is a big challenge to us. We need to actually give our patients and even ourselves tools which would not only detect the disease much earlier than it would actually present. Because my simple philosophy, which I tell to my patients and everybody, is disease like fire in the house. When there is a fire, you bring a fire brigade to douse the fire. But whatever there is a scar, it is always remaining for life. So it's always better to actually prevent the fire from coming and detect it much earlier. You may have genetic predispositions which actually are able to detect the disease much earlier or predisposition to that disease much earlier. Say, for example, PRS, the polygenic risk score for the coronary artery disease. If a person has that, that means in the futuristic life, he would have much higher chances of having heart disease. So you can then definitely put that person on a stringent lifestyle measures or medications to prevent it. Similar kind of a thing, the biggest challenge has been addressed to in oncology. In oncology, initially about 10 years back, we were treating organ tumors, organ malignancies. Today, we are not talking about organ malignancies. We are talking about diseases which are based on targets, the receptors, the signals. And on the basis of that, there are targets deliveries also. So it's not only that we have different molecules coming up because the targets have been identified, the delivery systems have been developed so that the collateral damage is minimum and the disease is only hit where the disease is. And these are all the types of things which are happening in precision medicine. Probably if I look at it, lung cancer, for example. 10 years back, the lung cancer was having a mortality as high as 99% in 1 year, only 1%. And this is something which has transformed significantly over the 10 years. And now today we are looking at average 30 to 50% survival in 1 year. So similar thing is happening in most of the cancer. Almost 70% of the oncology stuff is based on only on precision medicines and all. In my hospital, what we are doing is, obviously we are not too far behind. The oncology department is too much developed on the basis of these targeted therapies. Even in cardiology, what we have tried to is, as I was mentioning, about disease detection much earlier, before it hits you. So we actually look at a person and the person's lifestyle risk factors, smoking, diabetes, hypertension and all. But that is not all. We'll have to look at imaging, which again, AI-based, we can detect much earlier whether there is a start of atherosclerosis or not. But much before that, we have genomics, which actually help us whether this person belongs to a family and is vulnerable to develop disease. So at our hospital, we have a comprehensive risk prediction and prevention program, which we have recently started on the basis of the Indian population. Unfortunately, the world over, we have a lot of advancements in the genomics and the repercussions of that. In India, the things are just developing in that particular direction. So we have laid up this foundation for this particular step in our hospital.
I mean, I think there's a very interesting point then that starts coming out of this. I mean, so I'm a VC, Panacea Ventures. We invest in global innovation wherever it is in the world, 700 million under management, 38 companies. You know, we're investing in really the leading edge, I think, of some of these sorts of spaces that we're talking about. And we see some really amazing therapies come in that have been designed to treat some very specific patient populations. The challenge is, because we're now developing these drugs, therapies, approaches for smaller groups of patients, often the economics mean that the cost is much higher. And that perhaps means that access is no longer going to be the same. In Singapore, recently, there's been a big controversy about what targeted oncology medicines are covered under your insurance, and do you need a rider, and what specific therapies are included in your riders. I mean, I wanted to ask the panel just broadly, you know, precision medicine is a great idea, but is there ever going to be a future? I don't know if anyone seen the film Elysium? You know, this world where you have people on the earth who don't really have access to healthcare, and there's these people who live outside the earth who've got all the latest tech. I mean, is that going to be a problem going forwards if all the real advances are going to be made, but they're not going to be accessible to everybody?
Can I just answer that? You know, what happens is, if I look at the computers available 10 years back, the size was much bigger, the speed was much smaller. The technology is advancing in all fields. So what we feel is unaffordable today, because it has just been invented, because that is the invention cost. It has to come out from the users. Over a period of time, when the competition grows, and Jenny was mentioning about actually having compatriots, many of the fields, actually that is good. For the advancements of science and reducing the cost and having competitive outcomes, it's actually more welcome rather than not welcome. I would say that I look at a thing which is unaffordable today becoming affordable maybe in 5-10 years. The same technology. Rather, I would say that technology becomes old pretty soon, much sooner than what we imagine. So I think what we look at in today's perspective is not going to be true from tomorrow's perspective. What we talk about the aliens, I am very much fan of that Star Trek movie about 40 years back we used to see. Then there was a kind of a button which we would disintegrate an individual and reintegrate an individual somewhere else.
Star Trek.
Yeah. So it's not undoable. If there is advancement on science, Jenny was mentioning about the data burdens, but I think today we are realizing that the computers are also advancing. The Blue, which was such a huge, horrendous computer, the technology is advancing in all frames. And no sooner, maybe next 30, 40 years, we may so have that the genomic imprint or the chemical imprint of the individual is locked into the computer and can be recreated somewhere else.
And Jenny?
So yeah, so I'll add on to that too. I think in order to realize that, and I 1000% agree, I'm gonna just add another layer there. If our goal is democratization, we either achieve that in the most purest and most beautiful sense, so we achieve democratization, or we've actually widened the gap of access, right? There really is nothing in between, if you really think about what we're confronted with here. And so this idea of interoperability, and I think what I'm so excited about, again, to see yet another Switch conference, yet another important conversation, and seats filled with important people here, all of you who are probably thinking about this very matter in your own organizations and whatever country you're coming from, to think about how can we actually cooperate and collaborate together so that we're building infrastructure and systems that can be interoperable, so that when we say we want to democratize, we have a through line. It's actually feasible. And we haven't created disparate, siloed systems that can actually talk to each other, and we're further widening this gap, right? So I think it's exciting, and it's exciting to see so many people who are interested in this, and excited to hear some of the conversations that will come from this.
I wonder whether or not also the other thing that has to change is the way that we develop these new approaches and new drugs. I mean, we talk about $2.5 billion to get a drug to market, and the challenge that a lot of pharma companies have is if you're now working in an area of oncology and you're going after 1% of patients, then it's challenging to justify the investment if that's the number of patients that are going to be served. If we, however, we can massively reduce the costs it takes to develop those drugs and bring them to market, then perhaps we can bring out these drugs at a much lower cost.
Yeah, giving you an example, recently we had a Paragon HF trial where RNAs actually were found to be not so useful in heart failure with preserved ejection fraction. But the AI, the sub-analysis did mention that females and less than 57% ejection fraction were benefited. But this thing is not applicable into our clinical sciences, would never come into as a guideline. And same thing is true for the AI, because AI is actually giving you hints and directions. And if we actually develop a system and come out of this old statistically jargons and kind of understand what the AI is telling us, we can actually shorten the drug development time and also reduce the cost of development time. And not missing those hints, actually we can take those hints much earlier and design the trials such that the cost as well as time is much shorter, and probably we have a wider usage of the drugs. That is one side of the story. And again, the exchange program, I think in our hospital we are using is multidisciplinary committees to discuss about a problem. Why? Because many a times my treatment in cardiology comes from oncology, right? The drug-coated stents we use, they are anti-cancer drugs which are being applied to the stents, and they are used in cardiology. So what I'm saying is this amalgamation of different disciplines is very important. And I like what Jenny was mentioning, that we are working in silos. Even in particular molecule, for example, we are talking about cancer development, cancer drug development. We have so many different players. We have biologists, we have microbiologists, we have actually geneticists, we have actually radiologists, we have clinicians. They actually work in tandem. And on top of that, the data analysts, they are all working in tandem. Until unless there's a single group which actually amalgamates every information and comes out with a unified solution, we are going to be taking more time in development of the drugs.
So a big part of this panel was to talk about the future of precision medicine. So I'd like to turn our gaze forwards a little bit to what the years ahead might come. And first question here, if we think about traditionally where we see the real impact of precision medicine having come to date, you could argue that a big part of it's been in oncology, targeted therapies, etc. Where is it going to come next? What are the therapeutic areas? Are we going to see real, the patient-changing impact occurring within, within the clinical setting?
I wish I had an answer for you, Carl. I can't give you an answer to that question. I'll tell you what we're going to have a go at, and I think it's really important. We spoke earlier on about how, different people or different countries or different organizations are approaching the problem differently, and I think it's important because we need to identify things that we think that matter, but also things that we can influence and begin working in that space. And I think being able to see what everybody is doing is really important, and that makes events like this really important. We're in phase 3 of the National Precision Medicine Program. The push that we're making is how can this inform preventive health? And recognizing that a lot of preventive health is going to be around changes in lifestyles, changes in environmental exposures, changes in the social structure.
And cardiovascular, would you say, is that fair? Cardiovascular, diabetes, those areas?
I think in cardiovascular disease and diabetes, we tend to see the end stage of the natural history. There are real challenges, even if we had everybody's genomes on a Star Trek sort of ship, and even if I was Bones. There's all sorts of things that we have to overcome, beginning with how do you communicate that risk in a way that is meaningful to patients? How do you reduce the friction? How do we get people to disengage from their phones long enough to get exercise? What determines the way that people choose the foods that they eat? These are all very human things. The answer is not going to come from biology. The answer is going to come from understanding the human condition and how we make choices in the world. And it may be marketing, it may be whatever. I think we need to reach outside the traditional areas where we work.
And can I just say, you asked about cardiology. So I am a firm believer. Our mistakes, our failures are our best teachers, right? So if I look at it as a cardiologist perspective, no drug today is perfect. There are side effects. There are people who would not respond to drugs. There are people who would actually have adverse events to those drugs. Classical example, statins. Statins induce myopathy. There is enough data that you can pre-identify people who would respond adversely to statins through your genomics and all. Similar kind of thing is available for warfarin, for example, those who are super responders. So you can actually preempt and pre-warn for them. Clopidogrel, for example. There is data now that if you actually have genomic prediction that this is clopidogrel resistant group, so then you can choose a different drug. So you can improve on it. And I think I would strongly say that our failure should be the target for the future investigations and therapies development. The second important thing which I wanted to mention here is that the world is actually going to get that direction. Why? Because somebody about 200 years back planned to go to the moon. They could not reach to the moon, but they actually developed the technology to reach to the moon, and then today we are on the moon. People are on the moon. And I'm quite not going to be surprised if in maybe a few years to come, they develop a condominium there, they develop circumstances there to live on the moon also. So you have to dream first, and you have then to decide how to reach to that place.
And can I just remind the audience, we are taking some questions, so if you've got the QR code, please do send them to us, and we'll do our best to answer them. But I certainly just to build on some of the points being made, I think it's these disease areas where currently we're treating patients with a one-size-fits-all. I mean, in my last company, we worked on atopic dermatitis or eczema, and it's just one type of patient. There's a given treatment paradigm, but increasingly we're learning that there are different drivers of disease, and perhaps we need to understand the different drivers and treat patients differently. The other one that we're seeing a lot from the perspective of an investor at the moment is in obesity. Now, if you go to the US today, almost every person's on a GLP-1, and we're now starting to realize these drugs behave differently on different patients. And now it's a matter of saying, well, how do we figure out which of the patients that respond? Why does one patient get 10% weight loss, one patient gets 20% weight loss? And these are going to be the things that I think could drive the next wave of personalized medicine. But Jeannie, I can see you're trying to...
Yeah, I'm going to... I think it's my role, right? If you have innovation in your title, you must be the contrarian, or at least push a little bit. Preventative, absolutely critically important. Better care in a very specific, personalized way. I think one thing we haven't talked about yet is we've been so focused on curative, prevention, living well, and yet we are all marching second by second towards death. And I think one thing we haven't really talked about when we think about how do we deliver better whole person care, so to speak, or precise care, is what happens at the end of life. How can we deliver very, very precise, comforting, humane, but very, precise medicine at the very end of life? And it's not just pain management anymore, right? So I don't know if anybody's in sort of the palliative space. I mean, I would really encourage sort of this forgotten specialty in many ways to really double down on how you can leverage the technologies and the innovation that's happening in this space to make sure that we have a full, complete look at the human experience all the way through the end of life as well. Patient at the center, your family members at the center.
So I'd now like to really get us to paint a picture for the audience of what you think the future really is going to look like. And let's say 20 years' time, patient goes into a hospital. What's going to be different now from what we're going to see, say, in 20 years' time?
I think there's a reasonable chance that many of us will have our genomes available very early in our lives. But I think we need to have the conversations about what we uncover and what we don't, and when we uncover it.
So you think we could all be sequenced at birth?
I think there's a reasonable chance.
Have you seen the film Gattaca?
Yeah.
I love that movie. And it's a scary movie, and I guess there's a lot of ethical considerations we have to overcome as we get there.
So in the same way that you sort of say, you ask the question, how are we going to produce small batches of medications at a cost that is affordable? I think we need to look at these things even now. I think we need to start to have those conversations with our patients, with members of the public. Jenny, I very much, you talk about living well, and there are some schools that sometimes I go into a conversation and we think about health as the way to live well, and increasingly, as I've gone through my own life, I've realized that you can have health, but that doesn't mean you live well. And the question really is, can the healthcare system, or can we build systems that enables those conversations? How do we ask our patients what living well means to them, right? And not have it burst some performance measurement thing that we're bound to, because ultimately, when you're a healthcare provider, that is our role. And I think there's so much that we can do in that space. We just need to think about it right at the start.
What I look at is there is already things heading towards modification of the genes, CRISPR technology. If you identify a defect, you can actually use technology today to correct it out. There are the things, my son in the US is actually working on the kids born with neurological defects and actually correcting it much earlier. Similar kind of things can then be extrapolated to other diseases. Diseases which we recognize today are going to be redefined completely. Diabetes is no longer going to be diabetes. It's going to be a conglomeration of other factors. The other thing which I look at is, as far as definition of disease, probably I'm looking at a complete transformation in the future. I'm going to look at the treatment modalities to be completely different, more targeted rather than the generic medications. The third thing which is important and what was mentioning is today also we have siRNA-based therapies in most of the fields. You talk about hypercholesterolemia. You talk about amyloidosis. And I'm cardiologist, so I'm always biased towards that. So you are moving towards the correction at a very inception level. So I think that is something which we are going to be working on. So.
Jenny, I'll let you have the last word.
I don't think I have much to add to the brilliance of my two other panelists here other than, you know, I think if we do this right, we'll have set up a system, a global system by which we can all work together to achieve really strong, distinct care that is goals, values, and aligned with everybody's sort of wishes, exactly to your point. So that's it.
Well, thank you for that great discussion. I mean, I think for me, some of the key points coming out of this are, you know, number one, precision medicine is very broad. We're not just talking about a targeted oncology medicine. This goes all the way back even into preventative healthcare and really targeting the individual. The other point I think coming away from this is we are just at the nascent stages of precision medicine and how we implement it in medical practice. And the future is going to look very different and may well look like one of those science fiction movies that we all love. Hopefully Star Trek. Thank you very much.
A round of applause for Dr. Frith and our distinguished panelists for a brilliant first conversation. Thank you, of course, Jeannie, Dr. Sanjay, and Prof. Tai. And as they stand, ladies and gentlemen, it's been such an invigorating conversation. Before they come downstage, let's give them a big round of applause. Thank you.
In a world grappling with unprecedented health